Cindy. Cindy is a legend, and I've known her for decades, and I'm just so impressed with the work that she's done over the years. So I'm Suzanne Mattei. I just ferried over here from Brooklyn, which is where I live, and we've been fighting the battle of the Williams Pipeline over there. I'm an attorney, but most of my work background has involved technical review of projects. I did this in the New York City Controller's Office on wastewater treatment plants, waste management facilities, and lots of other kinds of projects. Nobody gets paid if it doesn't get through the Controller's Office. And I also did it as regional director of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, in charge of permitting and enforcement in the 5 boroughs. And the most important thing that I've learned through all of my project review work is you have to ask the questions. And don't be surprised when they don't have good answers, because it happens more often than it should. It happens more often than I always expect to be wrong. I always expect that my question will turn out to be a really stupid question. And it's just amazing how often they don't have the answer. So when 350.org asked me to look at the alternatives, what could be alternatives to this project? The first question that I asked was, alternatives to what? What is this project really for? What is the need that this project is supposed to meet? And you had Williams out there and National Grid out there saying, well, you know, we need to convert boilers from heavy oil to natural gas, and there's state policy that is saying that this should be done, and we're concerned about heating problems that have occurred in public housing. They were, telling people in public housing, you need this. Those were the. So I started, first I looked at the public housing issue because it didn't make sense to me. I knew a little bit about public housing, and I knew that they had started converting from oil to natural gas in the 70s. So how much of the public housing was still even burning oil? And when I looked at it, I found that 98% of the public housing in New York City is already using natural gas. So we're not talking about a lot of conversion even being possible. And about 2% of the buildings were actually using steam or electricity, so they weren't going to be converting. So it was like this 0.4% that was left. And they weren't burning heavy oils. They weren't burning number 6 or number 4 oil. They're using number 2 oil, which is a distillate oil. It's more like a diesel fuel. And in New York City, the policy is to blend number 2 oil with biodiesel. And when you do that, when you blend, you get to the point where it's competitive with natural gas when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. Number 2 oil is it produces it cuts particulates by about 95%. It's an ultra low sulfur fuel. So the particulates drop way, way down. That was the reason they were getting rid of number 6 and number 4 oil. And then when you blend in with the biodiesel, you get the greenhouse gas emissions down. And of course, when you look at the life cycle of natural gas, you have to worry about the leakage, because natural gas is methane. Anybody know how much stronger methane is than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas?
86%, 76 times.
There you go, Jeff. Sierra Club will always tell us, right? So, yeah, it's a powerful gas. So it wasn't NYCHA. NYCHA was not, cross that off the list, right? Then I looked at the private housing. And again, I was thinking, what are they really talking about? Because the number 6 fuel boilers were supposed to convert by 2015. And did they? Well, they were a little late. They were all converted by February of 2016. So that's a long time ago. That's a long time ago. And Williams had increased the capacity of natural gas supply to New York City and Long Island in 2017. And at that point, Williams had announced that this was enough for 500,000 homes and was going to solve the, was going to address the winter fuel needs for 2017 to 2018. Well, this is after all the number 6 boilers converted. So what were we talking about? So I thought, well, maybe we're talking about number 4. So I looked at the number 4 boilers, and I found out that they have been tremendously reduced. There's, there might be like 400 maybe still operating in National Grid's territory. About a third of them are so small that they don't even require a certificate to operate. They just have to register. And then I asked the question, even if all of those converted, what would they convert to? And I looked at what happened with the number 6 boilers, and we've got data for the multifamily homes that converted, and about half of them converted to natural gas. The rest of them said, we're just going to burn number 2 oil and blend in the diesel. So again, you just keep shaving it off, and there's not a heck of a lot left. Then I looked at the various alternatives that are coming online, and one of the things I found was that the heat pump technology which is basically an air conditioner that works backwards. And it can either be geothermal or it can draw from the air. And years ago, those technologies did not work that well in the colder temperatures. That's not true anymore. There have been tremendous technical advantages. And the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority came out with a report that said, heat pumps can make a huge difference in New York City. And we definitely know that it can work in a huge proportion of the individual homes in the smaller apartment buildings, which is what dominates National Grid's territory in New York City. So I'm looking at all this, and I'm asking myself, what are they doing? What are they talking about? They must be talking about the number 2 oil. They must be talking about wanting to market the gas, because fracked gas is expensive. It needs a market. New York area is a lucrative market. What they want to do is they want to get in here and they want to lock in natural gas as much as possible in the area before all of these other technologies come in and start taking over, which, they will do eventually. So they were really talking about number 2. And again, when I had looked at the biodiesel blend with the number 2 and compared it with natural gas, there was nearly, there was not a compelling case to be made that this was going to be a benefit. And as I thought about it from a business perspective and from a homeowner perspective, I could see a real disadvantage. Because people don't want to change twice. They don't want to convert their home heating to one system and then a couple of years or 3 years later convert it to something else. So if they convert to natural gas, they're going to stay on natural gas for a stretch of time. So they're going to be burning fossil fuel. They're not going to be switching to renewable energy. So there's an actual disadvantage to converting to number 2 boilers at this time. It's more flexible. So the question is, and I actually was suggesting we should title the report, "This Pipeline is No Bridge." But the basic notion is if you've got a project that involves a 15-year contract, the pipeline that's going to have at least a 40-year useful life. This isn't a bridge. This is a barrier. This is not going to get us where we need to go in terms of greenhouse gas emission reduction. And it's just not necessary. And when I looked at growth, that was really interesting. And there were some surprises there. If you look at Long Island and New York City, Suffolk County is not seeing growth. They're actually losing population. Nassau County a little bit of growth, but it never gets above half a percentage point. New York City had some growth for a stretch of time, but now it's slowed way down. Basically, people have said enough with the high rises, and people are fighting back, and they're saying, you know, why don't we let the sewage treatment plant infrastructure catch up with everything that we've been building in New York, and it's slowed way down. But even more than that, the really interesting thing is that the energy demand and growth have become decoupled in recent years. That even with growth, you're seeing reductions in demand. So the Long Island Power Authority, which is certainly not considered a radical agency, had been planning in 2010 to build new natural gas power plants. They're not going to do it. They've crossed them off the drawing boards. They said, we're going to deal with what we need to deal with through renewables. We don't need these natural gas plants. Demand is going down, not up. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I nosed around a little further. I found like the same thing is happening in northern Indiana. They're shutting down coal plants. They're shutting down several coal plants. And they're not using natural gas as a bridge. They're cutting out the middleman. They're going straight to renewables in northern Indiana. You know, again, not a hotbed of craziness. It's, you know, heartland of America, and they're going to renewables. So basically, we're really talking about it's a bridge to nowhere. It's a pipeline that we don't need. The numbers are not adding up. I can't justify, you know, as I look through the record. The thing that's most upsetting, though, is that none of the agencies have put this question to the test. They haven't been forced to answer this question. They haven't been forced to respond to anything by any agency yet. And that's something that really needs to happen. There should be a public review of the need for this project, because it's going to lock us in. It's going to lock a lot of people in to fossil fuel at a time when we should be not doing that. We should be looking for ways to get to non-fossil fuel, renewable, clean energy as quickly as we can. So that's it.